Hi guys, and welcome back. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the need for white supremacy and racial oppression. As you guys may or may not know, I'm in my third year of a PhD program in clinical psychology, and my dissertation research focus is actually on looking at acculturation, Black identity development, and African American parents, and implicit racial bias in children. And part of looking at implicit racial bias in children and looking at the constructs of Black identity development and acculturation, I kind of have to go back a little bit to talking about like the origins of slavery, the functionality of slavery, how racial oppression from slavery was internalized, and just the whole shebang. And I'm going to kind of focus on that part in my video, in this video, talking about the need for racial oppression, the need for white supremacy. Now, I know it sounds kind of weird to think that there is a functionality to racism, right? I mean, we all know why racism exists. I mean, we kind of understand like the effects of racism, right? But I don't know that many of us actually know why it exists. And I think a lot of times people attribute it to, oh, well, white people just hate Black people, and they don't like us, they want to be mean to us. But that's definitely, I think, could be a component of it. But I think sometimes we overlook the reality that racism actually serves a purpose. Racial oppression, unfortunately, it serves a purpose. It is a benefit to white people to oppress Black people. Now, when I say white people, I'm not talking about all white people. I know some white people may watch this video and they're like, oh, I'm not racist, or it's not all white people. No duh. We're talking about, generally speaking, we're talking about this issue, this social issue that seems to never go away, of white racial oppression towards Black African American people. And like I said, it just seems like there is a need. That's just a reality. There is a need for white people to racially oppress another group of people. It serves to their benefit. Back during slavery, it was more a financial and political benefit. It was about power. Today, it's still about power. And that's what I want to talk about kind of briefly in this video. How white people benefit from subjugating Black Americans, from putting us down. It's a psychological benefit. It gives them a sense of identity and strength. It's sad, of course, for, when you think about it, for white people to gain strength, power, political and economic power from oppressing Black people, but it's the truth. And no, we know that they don't only oppress Black people, right? They oppress all different kinds of, as they call it, minority group, ethnic minorities. I don't like that term minority because it makes it seem like we are just small and we're just insignificant. But it's referring to numerical minorities with respect to population and size, in proportion to the dominant so-called culture. So, yeah, it's like they gain something. They gain something politically, economically, and psychologically from doing that. I mean, when you look at white people who are in positions of power, and for Black people, you can kind of think back to some encounters or experiences that you've had with white people. And when you challenge their, position of power or authority, like, look how they act. They freaking lose it. White people lose it when they feel like their sense of being is threatened. It's not just white people. I mean, that's human nature, period. But I'm talking about specifically in this kind of situation. When this happens, white people, they lose it. I know this because I'm the kind of one, this is just me. I think my personality, I've always kind of been the one, not necessarily to challenge authority, but to assert my position. Because I feel like in a sense, I feel like I have power. Yes, I respect a person's position of authority. Don't get me wrong. It's not to say I'm going out just being disrespectful to people who are in positions of power. No, I don't want to convey that message. But knowing the power that I have within myself as an African woman, as a human being, we all possess power. there are times when my power kind of shines, and when I'm encounter people who are in positions of power or authority, they feel sometimes intimidated or threatened by the power that I exude. And I'm like, this is just me. This is Danielle. Like, take it or leave it. I'm not going to change. This is who I always been. I always been a leader. I always knew who I was. Like, growing up, you guys would have to read my book, American Dreamer, but this is just the person that I've always been. I always knew who I was, and it can, like, when people around me, they can pick up on that. They can tell, like, okay, she know who she is, or she got her stuff together. It's like, yeah, I always been a leader. I always been the kind of person who I don't necessarily have to fit into a clique, or like feel like I have to, I don't know, like, how people feel like they got to fit in or they got to belong. I don't feel like I need that. If anything, I am the one that is the leader, and people are kind of like following me. Like, people always kind of, like, I attract people, so to speak, and people kind of come along with the go along, because I just have that kind of dominant personality, So I think when I am, like, encountering white people or, white people with positions of power who feel like they have power, and I'm just being myself, like, I feel like I have an opinion. Like, I'm a person, I can express myself. A person may have one perspective on something, and if I have a different perspective, like, I'm going to express that. Even in my class, I think my professor, he kind of getting a little bit annoyed by me, because it's not that I always, have to say something, but there are times when he may say something and I may totally disagree with it, and I just express myself. I express my perspective on it, and I feel like that's what graduate school should be like. It's not about that you have to just accept all of these different theories and teachings, and like you don't have a fucking mind of your own. I'm like, no, I have a mind of my own. Yes, I'm here to learn. I want to learn. I've always loved learning. That's why I've been a lifelong learner in school, like forever, But at the same time, I also like to teach. And I like to engage and interact. I like to share my perspective on things. I mean, obviously, you guys see from my videos, I like to share my perspective. And I'm like, I have an opinion. And if I have a different opinion, I'm going to state that. And I think sometimes because white people specifically who have this idea of white supremacy and power, and that's just who they are too. That's the identity that they've always known. Anytime, especially when a black person comes and say, you know what, I disagree, like, they really feel some kind of way, because they're just like, wait a minute, historically black people are supposed to be down here, we supposed to be up here. So it's kind of like they feel like you are stepping out of your position, you out of place in a sense to assert a difference of opinion. I find it quite ironic, but to me it's funny because I can see like their whole spirit change, like their whole demeanor change when their sense of authority or power is threatened, and it boils down to their identity. It boils down to who they believe that they are. I mean, I get it. For so many years, hundreds of years, white people have been in power in America. They have been in authoritative positions, or really authoritarian positions, if you want to be exact. They have been the dominant group, so to speak. So it's just like, if anybody try to challenge their sense of identity in the world, of course they're going to feel some kind of way. Even if it's done from a genuine place, a non-threatening place. It's like, I'm not out here trying to threaten people's sense of identity or attack people. Like, that is not my personality. But it's like, it's a catch-22, because it's like, how can I be myself, which is pretty a dominant person when it comes to like professional interactions, and being in the workplace or being in like professional environments like in academia. It's like, yeah, how can I be that way and not, I guess, step on white people's toes, so to speak? Like, they feel like, oh, well, she's challenging us, I do that a lot. I can't help it. It's like, I mean, if I agree with something, I will agree. I will say, yeah, that's right. Like my professor see this, my dissertation chair, she sees it. She's like, she sees a lot where she may say something. She says a lot of things that I agree with. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. You have a point. I agree. But then, I got to sit here and agree with everything. If I disagree, I disagree. And I'm going to let you know what? I disagree. And that's the thing. That's the problem. Because it's like when people are in positions of power, they are so used to ruling like with an iron fist. They're so used to everybody just kind of falling in line and agreeing with what they say. Almost kind of like a narcissistic personality in a way, and anytime someone disagrees, or challenges that something that they say, like, it's almost like you are really coming against them, threatening their sense of identity. And anytime that a person's sense of identity is threatened, yeah, you're gonna have problems. It's almost like threatening their sense of safety. They go hand in hand. Sense of identity and sense of safety go hand in hand. Exactly. Eugene says, be you. I can't help but be me. That's all I'm gonna be, but I'm just talking about the reality of it, and how, yes, there's a need for racial oppression and white supremacy, because that's who they are. That's all white people have known, is that they are the dominant ones. They are in control. And anytime a person comes and presents a contradiction to that theory or that reality, it's a problem. I'm seeing that, I see that a lot. And they just kind of want you just to bow down and deal with it. And I'm like, I'm not the kind of person that just bow down and deal with it. Sorry. And some people may say, oh, that's rebellious, and they want to add a negative connotation to it. Okay, that's just your mechanism to continue the oppression, to continue to keep people in their place. I'm like, stop it. What happened to this country that this ideal country we're supposed to be? Meritocracy is country for all people, It's like, that's bullshit. It's all about power and control. That's the name of the game in America. Power and control. That's where there's a hierarchy to things. You have the low class, the middle class, the upper class, That's essentially what it's all about. That's what it's about. Like, it reminds me, let's say, of an abusive relationship, right? Where you have a male partner, and I say a man because typically it's a man who's a dominant one in a relationship. It also can go the other way. We know that. But this is just an example where you have a man who's a dominant one, and he's abusing a woman. And then somehow the woman realizes who she is. Somehow out of nowhere, she said, you know what? I'm not going to take this abuse. I feel like I deserve to be treated as a human being, not as a object, not as an animal, not as a piece of shit. And she rises up and she asserts herself. She begins to develop a sense of autonomy, of independence, and she says to her partner, you know what, I disagree with that. Oh, you know what, I want to do something different. She goes against the grain, essentially. So to the point where it causes friction in the relationship. And she may end up leaving him. God forbid, especially when you're talking about domestic violence in relationships that have a long-standing history of abuse, domestic abuse, and the man is like beating the shit out of the woman. The worst thing that I guess a woman can do from the man's perspective who's abusive is just leave. Because that threatens his sense of identity. He no longer has an object he can bounce around and throw around and, and control. That threatens who he is as a person. He loses his sense of control, of power. When she leaves, she packs up and she leaves without even getting his permission or saying anything. She just bounces, right? And then let's say he come home and he's like, damn, where is my woman? She's gone. Of course, that is going to threaten his sense of identity. Alongside that, his sense of safety is shattered. Same thing with white supremacy. That's what you see out here in America. When you see black people rising up saying we're not going to take this violence, We're not going to take these killings. We're not going to take this racial oppression. You have protests and have people resisting this system. What are we labeled as? We get labeled. Why? Because that is a threat to the status quo. When we resist, it's a threat to white America's identity, their sense of power, their sense of safety. Is a threat. We are a threat. That's why we're labeled black extremists, when we're not extreme about just you just being black, you being who you are. You saying, you know what, I want to protect my nation, myself, my survival. That's what that's human nature. But they don't want us to exist, let alone exist and be free. They want to keep us under their control. So we get these labels, black extremists, and that's a serious label to have, because that's a term the FBI came up with. If you get labeled as a black extremist, they watching your ass, and they just trying to find any little thing that you do, any little thing that try to lock you up, to label you as a threat. That's something serious, man. That can disrupt everything. You could just be a black person out here just trying to do well for the black community, just trying to exist, but you get this label. Now that's, more obviously on the extreme example, but it sounds extreme, but it's really not, because that's what's happening to a lot of black people who are fighting for black lives. Now on a smaller scale, it happens in different institutions. In education, students are labeled. Anytime you have a black student who says, you know what, I'm going to assert my rights, it's like a threat to the system. When all you trying to do is just fight for equality. All you trying to do is just fight for your basic human right to exist, to be treated fairly. But they like, no. In their eyes, treated right, your right is to submit. Your right is to be how black Americans have always been, dating back to slavery. To be down here at the bottom, to just say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, to submit. You don't challenge the status quo. They don't want you to do that. Anytime you do that, it's like, okay, something is wrong with this person. No, there's nothing wrong with that person. That person is just saying, you know what? We are human beings. We have an opinion, and we have the right to assert that opinion. Essentially, It bothers me, because it's just like, this is just the reality that we are faced with in America. America that is obsessed with domination, power, and control.
And told Preston,
that's what this country was founded on, Obviously with slavery, look how they built America. Subjugating Africans to like animals. They was considered property, not even wanting to be counting them as human beings. They only wanted to see them as human beings when it was to their benefit, so that they can be able to count more people in the population, so they can have more power in terms of political power with the state. That's all they wanted us for. Outside of that, they're like, you is a object. You is property. You are property. That's how they see us, essentially. And you think they're going to change with the abolishment of slavery? Hell no. Those attitudes are passed down through epigenetics, through the generations, through socialization. They're passed down from one generation to the next, to the next, to the next. And that's why you see the descendants of slave masters, white people, are just like, hold on, it's our country, So when you have black people fighting for their lives with Black Lives Matter and protesting and just standing up for their survival, you got white people that feel threatened, and all of a sudden you have all of these freaking alt-right groups and white supremacist groups feel like they have every right to defend the Constitution, defend America, defend the Confederacy, with their Confederate flags, and they feel some kind of way. They just like, wait a minute, these black people trying to take over, and God forbid if black people get any kind of sense of power, because they feel like it takes away from their power that they have over us. You see what I'm saying? So people say, "Oh, I wonder if racism will ever end." It's like, hell no. Not when people who are in positions of power have this idea that they can't exist without power being in control. As long as there's a need for white people to be in control and to dominate, then they're always going to be racism, because that's pretty much the basis of racism. It's about taking control over a group of people, man, for them to maintain their power and control. I know you guys know this, but we have to continue this discussion. So, you know what? I got to go, but I do want you guys to share your comments below, share this video, and I will catch you guys in the next vlog. Bye.